Is gold dust even biblical? This is one of the questions that I asked myself after I experienced gold dust. So stick around, because in this video, you're going to learn about some really cool symbolism of gold in the Bible. Hey guys, I'm Mackenzie from A Cup of Life. We're in part 2 of a 4-part series about what gold dust is it biblical, can Satan physically harm us, all these different questions. Super excited for you to either be back or joining us at this point in the series. If you didn't watch part 1, I'm gonna leave a link for it right up here. You can go watch it or click the link in the description down below. Before we get going here, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel, hit the bell so that you don't miss the next video in this series. So, what does the Bible say about gold? I explained in part 1 of this series that the term gold dust or glory dust is a man-made name, but I was really curious what the symbolism of gold was in the Bible. So, I'm going to walk you through 4 different places in the Bible that talk about gold, as well as we're going to talk about, is gold even, is it bad? Is it good? What are my thoughts on it? All of that good stuff. So, here we go. I'm going to leave all of the Bible passages down below, so if you want to go read them on your own, that would be great. But I'm just going to read them from my Bible here. So the first mention of gold in the Bible is none other in Genesis chapter 2, verse 10. It says, "A river watering the garden flowed from Eden. From there it was separated into 4 headwaters. The name of the first is the Pishon. It winds through the entire land of Havilah, where there is gold. The gold of that land is good." I'm not sure if it's Havilah or Havilah or however you want to say it, but the point of verse 12 here, the first part of verse 12 says, "The gold of that land was good." Also, if you jump back to the very, very beginning, Genesis 1, where it follows the whole pattern of God created this and then he said it was good. Gold was created by God and therefore it is good. He already spoke it over that. So I thought it was really cool that the first mention of gold was so early on in the Bible, and that it literally states right here that the gold of that land is good. I'm not sure if this is the exact next time that the Bible talks about gold, but it's in a very, very big section in Exodus. If you've ever read through Exodus, good for you for making it all the way through, because it is kind of a tedious book to read for sure. But when you're reading through all of the chapters about the tabernacle, and God was instructing you need to make this and it needs to be this wide by this long, and all the really specific measurements. If you notice, I believe this starts in chapter 35. It might be earlier, but all this stuff about the tabernacle, almost every single thing was instructed to be covered in gold. Every single piece of the tabernacle and just everything. I think it's really amazing. I just think it's really cool that there's all the measurements and then it's supposed to be layered in gold. So that's really cool. Now I want to skip all the way to Matthew 2, verse 11. This is one of the most iconic stories in the entire Bible about the birth of Jesus. Something really cool happens here. So, Matthew chapter 2, verse 11 says, it's talking about the wise men that came. It says, "On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasure and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh." Okay, first of all, it says gold right there. And when I was reading through this and researching, it's one of those, parts of the Bible that you've read a billion times, but sometimes certain parts of it stick out to you after years of reading it. And that was one part that really stuck out to me, because I had a couple of comments on my original video that were saying things well, don't you think that God would use something bigger and better than gold dust? It just seemed very minuscule to them. But we're 3 different places already in the Bible talk about gold, and that gold was good, and that it was very, very symbolic of in the tabernacle, it's supposed to symbolize wealth and the goodness of God and all of that. But literally at the birth of Jesus, why was it gold? Why was gold one of the gifts? It had to have meant something of it's symbolizing wealth and God. So gold is not this minuscule thing that God wouldn't use to connect with us. I think that it's very, very obvious why he would use gold, because it symbolizes like wealth in his kingdom and like the riches of his glory and like all these things. So I was just really blown away by one of those things that I've read so many different times. For some reason, the specific time that I read through it, like that's what stuck out to me. And then jumping all the way to the end, and Revelation 21 literally tells us that the streets are paved of gold in the new heaven. So a couple different places I want to read in here. This is Revelation 21. Let's start in verse 9. It says, "One of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls full of the 7 last plagues came and said to me, 'Come, I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb.' And he carried me away in the Spirit to a mountain great and high, and showed me the holy city, Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. It shone with the glory of God, and its brilliance was like that of a very precious jewel, like a jasper, clear as crystal." It doesn't specifically say gold there, but I really like the part that says it shone with the glory of God. Which is something that's been described with the gold dust. So that's really cool. Then skipping to Revelation 21, verse 21. It's pretty easy to remember. I'm going to read 21 through 23. It says, "The 12 gates were 12 pearls, each gate made of a single pearl. The great street of the city was of gold, as pure as transparent glass. I did not see a temple in the city, because the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are its temple. The city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp." That in itself blows my mind and just makes me really, really excited for like just to be with God for forever. And yeah, guys, the streets are literally paved with gold, as pure as transparent glass. That just blows my mind. Okay, now let's talk about, is gold bad? There are a couple places in the Bible that specifically talk about gold, and there's a sense of it being bad. I'm going to explain those things for you. So they specifically center around the passages about the golden calf. So that shows up in 2 different areas that I know of. There might be more, but the 2 like most common ones. Many people will use this to rebuke everything that I just said about gold being good. But here's the thing. People will say gold is bad because it was the golden calf. It wasn't the fact that it was a golden calf. It was the fact that they were worshiping something other than God. It could have been made out of stone, covered in bronze. It could have been made out of glass. It could have been made out of any other substance, and it still would have been bad and still would have brought the same consequences, because the people were worshiping someone or something other than God. It is not the fact that it was covered in gold. Let's just read this real quick because I want you to get the full picture. Exodus 32, verse 1 through, let's do 4. It says, "When the people saw that Moses was so long in coming down from the mountain, they gathered around Aaron and said, 'Come, make us gods who will go before us. As for this fellow Moses who brought us up out of Egypt, we don't know what has happened to him.' Aaron answered them, 'Take off the gold earrings that your wives, your sons, and your daughters are wearing, and bring them to me.' So all the people took off their earrings and brought them to Aaron, and he took what they had handed him and made it into an idol cast in the shape of a calf, fashioning it with a tool. Then they said, 'These are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt.'" That is the issue right there. The fact that they are worshiping something other than God, and they were giving it credit for getting them out of Egypt. That is what is messed up right there, not the fact that it was covered in gold. There's another instance of golden calves in the Bible. It's in 1 Kings 12, starting in verse 25 through the end of the chapter. Basically, they made 2 golden calves, and they put one in Bethel and one in Dan, and people went and worshiped them. They were like, the calves were put in a place of like worship, like a temple or something like that. And again, people were worshiping these golden calves. And the part here that is messed up here of what the people were doing. So this is 1 Kings 12, verse 28. "After seeking advice, the king made 2 golden calves. He said to the people, 'It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt.' One he set up in Bethel and the other in Dan. And this thing became a sin. The people came to worship the one of Bethel and went as far as Dan to worship the other." Again, in this instance, They're worshiping something other than God. It doesn't even matter that they were covered in gold. So I don't think that these are valid disputes to say that gold is bad. In general, we shouldn't worship anything other than God. So no, you shouldn't worship gold, but that doesn't make gold bad, because God already said that gold was good. It was something that he created. So that's really just what I want to end on for this. Make sure that you click the subscribe button, hit the bell so that you don't miss the next video from me. Next time we're going to be answering the question, can Satan physically harm a believer? Be thinking about that this week, and we will talk about that in the next video. Don't forget to go check out part 1 of this video. Go back and watch my original gold dust video. Super excited for the next coming videos in this series, and I hope that you guys have a great week. I'll see you next time.